I've played some great games on the MSX, and honestly, my whole experience with the MSX has mostly been Konami games during my Konami conquest, which was only about 6 months ago. These games that I'm about to talk about made me want to lick a power relay barefoot in a puddle of water, games that just really don't represent any semblance of fun on the MSX home computer. Now, I understand that this era of gaming is quite interesting, and I'm sure that there are far more worse games out there, but for today, I'm just going to talk about 10 games that made me question buying life insurance again. Let's begin. You've likely played Hyper Olympics, but not the MSX version. Hyper Olympics is the Japanese name for track and field, which was released on tons of consoles. It was a very successful arcade cabinet, and as such, it was ported to 11 different formats. Most of them are wonderful, but if you play the MSX version, you're going to have a bad time. The reason is tied to the run mechanic. Many of the mini-games that you do involve running. Now, if you're old enough to remember the arcade version of this, you could just rig yourself a button masher, right? A comb or a metal ruler that you could rock back and forth. I've seen some people use toothbrushes. But in the MSX version, your run cycle is based on the left and right key. So you spend a lot of physical energy either A, typing left and right, which if you own a MSX, those buttons are pretty hard to push down. They aren't like modern keyboards. Or B, a joystick, which means you're going to rip that fucker left or right, or in my case, a controller. No matter how you spin it, you're really going to strain something trying to play this. Hyper Olympic 1 and 2 both share this, and that's why I really suggest you avoid this. Konami's golf is just barely golf. It would be more appropriate to call it violently whacking round objects while I happen to be on a golf course the game. It's golf, but it's a bad, horrible version of golf. You can kind of aim, and you can straight up max the bar out, but with each stroke you take, it feels like the ball just kind of moves. Now, I have no idea what the standard of golfing games were at the time. This game came out in 1985, so for the sake of argument, let's say Golf on the NES, which wasn't that great, but was in many ways better than this. Konami made tons of sports titles on the MSX. There was an entire Konami sports line of games, and only a few of them were playable. This is one of the ones that aren't. In the same vein as Konami's Golf, this belongs to the Konami Sports franchise. Now, in the arcades, Konami's Ping Pong was awesome. You have a joystick that moves left and right, and then you elect to take either forward hits or backhand hits, depending on which button you press. And it does involve some skill, because depending on the way the paddle is facing, your buttons will do different things. If you're facing right and take a forehand slice, it obviously won't be the same if you're facing left. The one issue I have with it is that unlike the arcade version, getting the timing down is such an art it makes it unfun. The physics, they're pretty good, and the game does go pretty quickly. Not in your favor, but pretty quickly. Right when you think you have it figured out, you overshoot, or you hit the net, or you hit off the table, or you just miss totally. I couldn't get into it. In a previous episode, namely my episode about 10 arcade games you should avoid, which I will link down below, I mentioned Road Fighter for being a total nightmare on the eyes. The MSX version is easier on the eyes, but a nightmare on the ears. Now I know you might be saying, stop being a goon ass and turn down the volume. Sure, I could do that. Then all I would be left with is a digital version of the Tomy Turnin' Turbo. The MSX port is significantly slower, the buzzing is a dreadful sound to hear, and the road rarely changes. You'll spend most of your time going straight, just to be so bored that when you see a bend, you get excited. Just for it to be another straightaway. I've yet to find a happy medium for this game that I enjoy, because they all suffer from something in some way. This game actually has a long lineage of titles. You might recall the spiritual successor Konami GT, which was in some ways a response to Pole Position, or the most recent game Road Fighters in 2010, which was Japanese only. Nightmare is an insane series. I say that with love. The reason I say that is because they never knew what they wanted to do with this franchise. Nightmare 1 was a shoot-'em-up run-and-gun. Nightmare 2 was a platform adventure game. And Nightmare 3, it's a point-and-click. But as a point-and-click, it's incredibly cryptic, tedious, and just grossly unfun. And it's kind of funny too, because like I said, Nightmare 1 is a phenomenal game. It's a shoot-'em-up. You just walk from the bottom to the top and you shoot things that come your way. I can't complain about that. Nightmare 2 was one of the greatest MSX games of all time. And then we had Nightmare 3, which killed the franchise. If you want to play it, you'll need a translation patch. It's available out there, but don't say I didn't warn you. This game is stupid. It's like dumb. The whole idea is that you're hanging out with your girlfriend who has a game called Shalom or whatever loaded onto her computer. Then you decide to pinch her butt, flirt with her, and then you get sucked into the game. These are physical things you have to choose to do in order to progress. From that point on, you have to have discussions with people with seemingly endless red herring conversational points, and if you add in the massive map, you have a 100% unfun experience. Do you like Gradius? I like Gradius. I like Gradius a lot. So when I saw Parodius, I was excited because obviously it was a parody of Gradius, and if I like Gradius, I should like Parodius, right? No. Yes, it's a parody. No, it isn't fun. This game plays like Gradius, but it has these obnoxious asinine bells from Twinbee and a power-up system that is 100% designed to fuck you. Imagine getting all of the power-ups and then a roulette starts happening at the bottom, and if you land on the question mark, you lose all of your power-ups. Funny, huh? It's not like the game is astronomically difficult on par with Gradius 2 in the arcades or Silver Surfer on the NES. It's not like the game moves you one frame a second so you can plan where you need to go. No. It's not like you need to spend a ridiculous amount of time trying to figure out if you're hitting the bosses or not. Do yourself a favor, just don't play this. Play Parodius Da or Sexy Parodius, because this one is rough. But hey, it's got one good song in it, Fifth Planet. It's a dope remix of the Swan Lake song. This is the first game ever created for the Batman universe. It was primarily made for the ZX Spectrum, which if you know anything about the ZX Spectrum, it was a Sinclair computer that rendered games in a grand total of like 15 colors. But most of the games I've played tend to use like 3 to 5. And most of the time, everything on the screen is that color, from the background to the sprites to any objects that you need to avoid. When it came to the MSX version, they just ported the ZX Spectrum version onto a cassette tape and said, send it. So in essence, I'm playing a ZX Spectrum game on the MSX, so visually, that's what you're going to contend with. Now, the game isn't bad if you like aimlessly wandering around, not knowing the ground from the ceiling, struggling with the awkward isometric view, and not knowing if the movement and jump commands are going to work because they're exceptionally weird. I think if you enjoyed Solstice, which is a much better game, then you might have more patience than I did with this title. I did beat it, and the ending wasn't worth it, but if you want to check it out, be my guest. Circus Charlie is an amazing novelty arcade game, and it takes a lot of practice. It's charming, it's witty, and honestly it was different from most arcade games at the time. The problem is, the MSX port of Circus Charlie is incredibly watered down and the hitboxes are very unpredictable, which matters because many of the minigames you're going to do involve jumping or dodging or even riding a horse and jumping over platforms. The reason why Circus Charlie was so great in the arcades is because the physics were there to make us do amazing things as a circus act, and the MSX just wasn't capable. Or maybe Konami wasn't capable of developing it in a way that accurately represented the arcade's vision. If you want to play a home console port of this title, I would suggest the NES version. It's significantly more playable to me. This is a very strange game. For starters, You're a baker. Nothing weird yet. Not only are you a baker, you're a baker that lives in an alternate universe where time goes by about 500% faster than normal. Okay. Not only are you a baker in an alternate universe where time goes 500% faster, you're a baker in an alternate universe where time goes by 500% faster while dealing with a non-stop raccoon infestation. You have to keep turning on and off conveyor belts to keep raccoons on the roof and the floor from either sabotaging your assembly line or stealing your baked goods. And at the end of the day, you get to deliver the surviving baked goods to a table and your score is calculated. The problem for me is these raccoons, they're kind of on meth. They are significantly faster than you, and the only way of defending yourself is by shouting at them. This is not a good game. Our final game today is Kings Valley 2. Now, I don't like the Kings Valley franchise at all because it's 100% trial and error. If I wanted to play a puzzle game that made more sense, I would just play Lode Runner. Now, Kings Valley 1, it is very odd. You run around with a pickaxe that you only use once and you break blocks. It's very much akin to Lode Runner, but once you grab the bag you need, you move on. However, that being said, Kings Valley 1 was much more playable. Kings Valley 2 gives you significantly less axes and incorporates multiple screen stages, which means that you need to memorize the trial and error for a 5x5 grid all the while being attacked, which I have absolutely zero patience for. There are so many more interesting MSX games out there, this is not one of them. That being said, I do love the MSX for standing strong against other home micros at the time, such as the Commodore 64 or the ZX Spectrum. But some of these games, they are much to be desired. If you like what you saw today, please do consider joining our community where you'll see tons of retro gaming information to satisfy your curious mind. If you don't mind, it would help me out if you'd hit that like button. It's how YouTube determines if I'm worthy of having my video in the cornucopia of bullshit to the right of your screen. Also, I love talking to every single one of you, so feel free to leave a comment down below. I do take the time to respond to every single message, even the mean ones. As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes. Fortifier out.